Hello, crafters, and welcome to Spring into Sandown, online craft show brought to you by From Picture to Page and Beyond Papercraft Shows. I'm Michelle Brown, creative director at From Picture to Page, which is our scrapbooking, mixed media art, and paper crafting community. And I'm so excited that you're here joining us today. Now, Spring into Sandown online show has a whole heap of demonstrations from our talented retailers and some guest artists. So for all the details for the weekend, head over to our website from picturetopageandbeyond.com.au where you can see all the sessions, get in touch with our retailers, and of course, while you're there, make sure you join our email list so we can send you out all the details and let you know what's going on. Now, whether you're watching us here live through Facebook or a replay on Facebook or YouTube, we are so excited that you're here. So pop in the comments, say hi, just like Florina has. If you've got any questions, let us know. And please do not click on any of the links that are in the comments. We are having a bit of a challenge. We found some spam followers. It's a bit like groupies, but really, really annoying ones. So we're doing our very best to get them out, but they are very determined, like a noxious weed. They just get into all sorts of nooks and crannies. So please don't click on any links. If you want to get in touch with Eclectic Images, you can Google it, or their link is here in the comment video description, or of course from the Picture to Page website as well. So I think that's it. So let's jump in with Springing into Sandown with Eclectic Images and Cathy. Hi, Cathy.
Good morning.
How is sunny Ballarat today?
Not sunny. No, but it's not raining, so that's all good.
That's good. So what's been happening at Eclectic Images?
We've had some new stamps come out this month.
Oh, nice.
And I was going to mention special offers after we've watched the video, but actually I'll mention this one now. We have got 20% off all of our new designs for the month of October.
Oh, fantastic.
So there'll be two of them. Some were Christmas ones that have already been featured a little bit in a few Facebook posts and things. And then we've got two new ones that we're featuring tomorrow and Sunday, and that's the Rosebud and the Dragonfly. So I think people are going to really like those ones.
Yep.
Today's card is actually the Aussie Beach scene, which is something that a customer actually requested. She said she'd bought the beach scene and could I do a YouTube on how to use it? And I thought, it's a Sandown show, Picture to Page. That's a great chance
Perfect opportunity.
to stamp. It's a good stamp and people love it, but it's good to go over. They watch me do the technique live at the shows and then often get home and go, oh, now I bought these brushes and how was I supposed to actually use them? So to have it as a YouTube and on Picture to Page so that they can go over it and have a look at the brush techniques and create beautiful cards themselves. And you can do it as a sunny day. You can do it as a stormy night. You can do it as a sunset. I think we've got the sunrise look, sunset look today. But yeah, you can create so many different looks with just a couple of stamps.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Like I said, we hear so many people, they watch the video, they'll go and buy the products and then go, oh, and then, come back to the video. And like you said, once it's on replay, you can pause. Of course, you can reach out and get in touch as well.
Right.
And it makes it so much simpler when you break it down.
Yep. Because I've been to craft shows and come away with products and gone, I'm not sure what to do with this one. So I totally understand people getting caught like that. And you're taking it at a craft show, you're trying to take in so much stuff.
Yeah.
There's so much happening and you go from stand to stand and this is wow and that's wow. And then you get home and look at your stash. So I think YouTube's fabulous for that. And doing our online craft shows has just made so much more with Facebook Lives and YouTube for people to have those resources.
Yeah, because we'd never buy something at a craft show and then go home and realize we already had one of the same, would we? So at least here we can go run and check before we order anything and then we're safe.
I once bought a re-inker for an ink pad that I didn't have.
Yeah, I've been known to buy a couple of greens. This is really pretty, and also pretty now I have more than one.
Yep. Well, it's funny. It's good for our customers, I think, to hear that we do those silly things too.
Yep. Yeah, as we said before, we both started out at Crafters. I remember going to Melbourne Paper Expo when it was in the St Kilda Town Hall. I remember when we had, Rubber Down Under and all that. So, yeah, we've been doing it for a while.
We've been around the traps for a bit.
We have.
We've made all the mistakes as well as having all the fun.
Yep.
So we've got loads that we can pass on to people. And for those who are more experienced crafters, just different ideas to share, different ways to maybe challenge them that, okay, well, have you tried this colour and this colour? I'm actually doing a competition at the moment for Catherine Pooler inks, which we're going to have a big special on those next month.
Right.
So anyone who's thinking Catherine Pooler inks, which I am using today in today's card, hold off, wait till next month on Catherine Poolers, because next November is their celebration of 5 years since they
Okay.
started
Mm-hmm.
having the inks. I think they'd had the rest of the company, but the inks were launched 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So all of November is going to be a big Catherine Pooler month. So we've got specials on for that.
Yeah. Oh, excellent.
And I've forgotten totally where I was going with that thought.
Who knows? Something about doubling up on colours, but
Yeah. Well, anyway, so so if you're loving what we use in the demo today, wait. Don't buy Catherine Pooler inks this month. Wait till next month. Just a bit of a
okay,
heads
that's a
up.
good thing
Oh,
to
that's
know.
what I was going to say. We've got a competition on. That's what I was talking about. So the
That's right.
competition is and you can just go, we've got a Facebook post about it, or you can email me, and you just have to say your 2 favourite Catherine Pooler colours. And if you don't have any Catherine Pooler colours yet, just have a look at them and go, oh, well, I'd really like that one. And so 2 that you think will be your favourites is fine. And then we've got a wonderful gift pack from Catherine Pooler themselves with the 6 new inks plus some stamps and dies and card. And it looks like a really good pack. And we've got 1 of those to give away. So
fantastic.
what I've said for the competition is, yes, tell me your 2 favourite colours. And I'm getting some really interesting colours coming through that's making me think, oh, well, what if I use those 2 together? And you think, even if you've been crafting for years, you'll still find different colour combinations and go, okay, well, I've got this stamp and that's going to work so well with these colours. Or like I did for, I think it was one I did for the last, might have been the winter P2PCrafts.
They're all starting to blend into one, aren't
I
they?
know. It was a magnolia one, and I used an apricot-y colour called clay mask in with a blue colour. And I wouldn't have thought of putting those 2 together, and they worked really well. So it doesn't matter if you're a newbie or you've had 20 years experience or 30 years experience, there's still new colours to discover, or new ways of using colour to discover.
And that's what I said about mixed media. There's something about craft that really reveals some of our character, isn't it? Why is it that we're too scared to put colours together that mightn't match? I mean, what's going to happen?
You might want to go over it with something else later. So what?
Exactly.
Yeah, and mostly you'll stand back and look at it and go, well, yeah, that works. That's great.
Yeah. Or if it didn't quite work, then sometimes you can just tweak it. And sometimes it's not like completely wrong. It's just a little bit wrong, and you just got to tweak it a bit to get it aligned.
Yeah, it might be just that you need more of one colour. My craft group that I have here, we were doing a background blend with 2 different colours, and one girl was using a blue and then teamed it with one of the greens and went, no, it looks like it's a blue-based green, but it's not blue enough. And we picked another green and then just went, that's it. It was just, we looked at the colour and thought, that's the one, and then it didn't work. So quickly swapped to another colour, and the result was amazing.
Just brought it together. Excellent. Well, should we jump into the video, Cathy?
Let's do that, yes. I do like this one. The Aussie Beach scene is a favourite of mine. It's just using 2 stamp sets, the Aussie Beach scene plus the grasses set, and then lots of ink colours.
Excellent. Sounds like fun. Let's jump in.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks for joining me. Today's tutorial is going to focus on our Aussie beach scene, so creating a lovely sunset over the water, which I'm sure a lot of you are going to enjoy seeing. So the beach scene can be used for a sunny day, a stormy day, it can do a night scene, or it can do the sunset scene that we're going to do here today. Our stamps are going to be just 2 sets today. The Aussie beach scene, which includes a little saying and some seagulls. And then we'll be using one of the grasses out of the grass set. Our inks are all going to be Catherine Pooler ones, apart from also a little bit of Versafine just for some embossing. But our Catherine Pooler Midnight Black is the best black for stamping your images onto the gloss card. I should have mentioned that we're actually working on the glossy card, which will give our finished project a lovely postcard type finish. So yes, our inks are Midnight, and then for our colouring, I've gone mainly with the Date Night collection. So we've got Chiffon, Catching Rays, Pucker Up and Cummerbund. But then for our sand dunes, just putting in some sandcastle and icing on the cake. And I just wanted a bit more depth to some of the blues, so I think some suede shoes and some juniper mist will work really well for that. So we're creating a little bit of a scene sort of like this, with just that colour coming up onto the sky, and then that will be echoed across the water as well. So let's go. We're going to be using our number 10 brushes and also some of the number 2 brushes for doing our blending. I do find that although I like the blending brushes like these ones for working on matte cardstock, I don't find that they work as well on the glossy card. These long handle ones, even though a lot of us go, why does a handle have to be so long? They're actually, the size of the rounded brush ends actually just well on the gloss card. They're flexible enough to give you some movement with your inks, but they're still soft enough that they don't leave brush marks and things like that. So let's get started. I'm going to use the, as I said, the Midnight ink for stamping with, and use it in my precision press. I have put a bit of scrap paper in the bottom of the press because I know my stamp is likely to go a little bit wider than my card, and I don't want to be stamping with the stronger ink on here. It will clean off, but it's just easier to catch it on a bit of scrap paper. Now, because my stamp is that little bit wider than the cardstock, I don't want to butt my stamp. Normally I would say butt your cardstock up against that nice firm edge there, because that way it helps to hold it steady. But I don't want to do that with this one because the stamp's going to overlap the edge. So I'll actually just lift it up a bit higher and line it up with the grid lines, with the measuring lines across the top there. Then we pop our magnets in, and particularly with gloss card, I am using an extra magnet. Let's give that card a wipe. Work out where my stamp's going to go. So I want more room up in the sky for our colouring of the sky than what I want down below for sand dunes down below. So I'm bringing the stamp down a bit on the card. And being gloss card, it is very likely to actually try and lift the card as I try and pick up the stamp.
That looks like a very well-loved stamp.
It is a well-loved stamp, and because it gets used with the Catherine Pooler Midnight ink, which does stain your stamps. So yes, archival ink and Catherine Pooler inks will stain your stamp when you use them. It doesn't affect the quality of the stamp at all. And in fact, sometimes it makes it just that little bit easier to see where you're actually stamping. So now I'm checking my card and I can see that it hasn't moved much at all. So I'm ready to ink up my stamp. Again, Catherine Pooler inks, really, really squishy ink pad. Can I bring that into shot there for Matthew? So very, very squishy. You do not want to put a lot of pressure on these ink pads or you'll just over ink. So it's just a light kiss technique. Just nice light tapping across. And you'll be able to see by the amount of shine of ink on the stamp that you've got good coverage. Just make sure you go out to all the edges. And sometimes some of the areas, like the heavier areas of grass down the bottom, that might be where I sometimes find that I miss a bit of inking. So I'm just checking that I've got plenty of ink on all those areas. Close my ink pad. Because this is a stronger ink pad, I do not want to stick my hand in that and then get fingerprints everywhere. Pop my stamp press over and then press down. And then you can either press everywhere or you can just rub across it. Just making sure that we've had pressure on the whole design, particularly, as I said, those grasses down the bottom. Lift it up. And if it lifts the card with you, that's okay. Just once it gets to the open position, just peel your card off the stamp. So if it does go travel with it, just peel it back and you'll be fine. Now that's given us a wonderful image. I would dry that with the heat gun. Heat setting it does help it to not smudge when you start putting your other inks on. Plus it speeds up the drying so that we can then get on with our inking. But just because I want to keep moving today, I've already inked and dried one so that we're ready to just keep going. I'll just give that stamp a little bit of a wipe clean. And then we can pop it to one side, which means we can use our stamp press later if we want to. Okie doke. So this is the one that I start to make sure I pick up the one that I have got dried. This is our one that I've created earlier. Now, if you're wanting to for your inking, you can use a mask. So this is where I've stamped the beach onto a bit of scrap paper. And then that can be laid over our image, with just making sure we can see a little bit of the stamped image showing past, and that will make it a little bit easier for your inking, or you can do it without. I'm going to show you both ways. So if we've got our mask there, I'm going to start with the chiffon ink, And yes, I do have brushes for each of my color families. So I have one, and in fact I have one for lights and one for darks. I always have a separate one for yellow because I definitely don't want to be putting other inks back into my yellow pad. But then I have one that covers the orange inks, another brush that covers the pink tones. I don't have one for each specific ink pad. Always ink just the end of the brush. Off now, if you're working on a paper pad, that's fine. Just tap it off on the paper or on the glass, and then you can start doing your circles and circle onto the card. If you're working on a glass mat like this, you can actually pick up some ink that's on your mat. If you're working on a paper pad, as you have less ink on your brush, just grab it more from your ink pad. Now, I always find working from the edges in is easier than going directly on the card. You're far less likely to get blobs of colour. But do make sure that as you put on an area that you blend the inks up and down so that this leading edge is very, very soft, ready for another colour to be blended back over the top of it. Now, I'm not worrying about taking it all the way to the horizon line because we're going to come in there with another couple of colours. So our next one we'll pick up is the Catching Rays, which is an orangey yellow. Switch to an orange brush. And again, we're going to circle that on. Now this is a softer orange than I often work with for doing sunrises. I'm going to actually be relying on the pink to give the intensity for this one. Now, if you're not happy with where your blend is, come in with your previous brush and just circle back over that until you're happy that the two colours have blended in together really nicely. Now let's grab our pucker up. This is a fantastic pink. I absolutely love this one. And if we were just working on the mat with the mask in place, we can actually start on the mask and just shade up from there. I'll put a little bit going up into the sand dunes, but I mainly want it just on that horizon area. Now, if we weren't working with the mask, I would actually come in and ink the end of my brush, but then push flat and wiggle it along that edge there. So you can actually get quite a good edge with your brush. Then we'll just bring the colour up a little bit into that Catching Rays, but I can also come back with the Catching Rays and push that pink back a bit if I need to. The other thing about working with a mask, you don't want to get fingerprints all over gloss card. So another good thing about having a mask is it gives you something to hang on to so that you're holding your card down, but without risking getting fingerprints on it. Let's grab our cummerbund ink now to give us our blues. And again, working from the edge of the card in. Now we're going to get a little bit of a green shade where the cummerbund is blending into the chiffon. But believe me, when you look at a sunset, there's often quite a green band where your yellow meets your blues. So don't be worried about that. Again, if you get a bit of a line there that you're not happy with, just come in this case it's the yellow brush, come in and soften that off. If I kept going with the blue, the colour would keep coming further and further down. And I don't want to do that, I want to keep all those colours there. So that's why it's better to actually use the yellow or the orange brush to push it back. Now let's add in a bit of suede shoes to give a little bit more blue to that sky. And this time I'm going to turn my card around just so that I'm working at an angle that's really good for me. And because I've already got a little bit of ink on my glass mat, I'm just going to give that a bit of a wipe before I stick my fingers in it. Okay, so let's move that around that way. And I'm now going to do a little bit of pouncing. So picking up colour again just on the end of the brush, and we're just going to pounce it on. Now it's very important when you're doing the pouncing to let the bristles of the brush bend, and also to just work a small area. You start on the very edge of the card and then follow it in as you've got less ink on the brush But if you start getting too much, grab your lighter brush, just buff it back a little bit, making sure that this whole edge gets blended before you move on to the next bit. This is probably a little bit deceptive because I've picked up a very dark blue brush, so we're possibly getting some darker blue colours coming through than what the suede shoes is, but that's okay for this sky. So on your corner, pressing the bristles down and then following into the card a bit. I can even take it around the corner. Don't try and keep going without turning your card around. So I can comfortably work to there, I can comfortably work to about there, and then I need to turn the card. Otherwise I'll end up pouncing the brush that way and end up putting blobs that I can't blend out. So I'm going to move the card around a bit, and rather than re-inking from the pad, I'm just going to pick up some of that ink off the mat and just fade it out a little bit down the side there. Okay, now I'm very happy with that. So now we'll start working up. But again, I'm just going to give that mat a quick clean off, just so we're not getting ink where we don't want it. Now, when you're looking at the beach scene, I'll bring the packet into view so you can see it on this one. When you're looking at the scene, we've got crests of the waves, and we want to keep those white so that it looks like the waves are breaking. So to do that, we've got to not put ink on them. The only way, we can't take, unless we add like Posca pen or something like that, we can't add white back into the card later. So we've got to not ink where we want the white. And I also want to put a little bit of our sun colours across the water there. So without re-inking our brush, I'm going to use my mask just hanging onto the card. So I'm going to add a little bit of pink there and a bit of our orange tones, and then start coming in with our cummerbund blue. And now this time I'm not going to do circles because I've only got a small area that I'm working in, and I want to get quite a crisp line of blue next to the top of that wave. So I'm brush down and I'm just wiggling it in. And I can just let it smudge slightly into those soft colours that I've already put on. So let's push our brush down, wiggle it across. If I want to get close to the sand dunes there, I can turn the card around and again wiggle my brush in nice and close there. Now we want to add some more depth. So here's where colours like our suede shoes come in, and this is where the smaller number 2 brush works really well. So what I'm going to do is just pick up some colour, again just inking the very end of the brush. You don't want to get ink all over the rest of the bristles because this is what you use to help you do your blending. So just ink the very end of the brush, tap it in behind that wave. It's very important. You don't want to go like this, you don't want to be that way and getting ink over that wave. What we want is the depth of the water behind the crest of that wave. So we pop it in and we can drag it up a little bit, but we can also use our big brush that we've just used just to tap over it. So what I'm trying to do is I'm aiming to blend this edge of it in with the other colours, but this edge that's next to my stamped line, I want to keep quite crisp. So that's why by just placing the ink there. Now, of course, you could make masks of each of these lines of the waves, but it's just as easy just to pop the little brush in there. I'm just dragging that up a bit. Then I'll come in with my bigger brush and just pat it out a bit. And you'll see as we go along that this really builds up the depth to the waves and makes our scene look so much more exciting. If you wanted to, particularly because this is the deeper part of the ocean out here, you could even add some juniper mist in there. Now I'm really going to in danger of sticking my arm in an ink pad, aren't I? I'll just move over a bit. So we could actually add some deeper blue if we want in there as well. And you start to see how we're changing the look of that water by giving it more lighter and deeper areas. Just a little bit more of that one, and then I'll move on to the next wave. Just in there. Use our big brush just to soften that top edge. Okay, now I probably won't use the juniper mist in the next one, so I'll pop the lid on that now and get it out of my elbow way. And let's go back to our cummerbund ink, our big brush, and start on the next wave. So we press the brush down, press it in behind that wave. And I'm being a little bit careful because I don't want to have too much pressure. I'm putting pressure on the edge of the brush, but I'm being careful not to smudge up this way at all because I don't want to colour, as I'm colouring this bit, I don't want to be accidentally covering that little bit of white of the wave. I hope that makes sense. So press the brush down and wiggle in, but keep yourself right along the edge of that wave. Don't let yourself drag up too much. But we can go right off the edge there. Now, very quickly come in with some of the suede shoes. Place it in. Don't be tempted to do the whole line in one go because this, although you've got a little bit of blending and drying time of the inks, you haven't got forever. So if you go too far, this lot of ink would have dried before you've had a chance to get back and do the smudging. So break it up into at least 2, if not 3 sections. Pop it on, you can drag it up a bit with that brush if you want to, and then come in, soften it out a little bit. I'll just move my mask down there so that it's not in the way of this wave. Patting on my suede shoes and giving it a soften. So now we've got another 2 waves to repeat that with. So cummerbund, wiggle in, remember, put the pressure on the brush. If you don't, you'll end up just covering, the brush will be too wide and it will just cover everywhere and you won't get this crisp edge. So don't be afraid to put that little bit of pressure onto the brush. Now normally when you're working with inks on glossy card, I'm saying work from the edge in, but here we're going directly onto the card because we've already got some ink there. Once you've already got a little bit of ink, it gives something for the other ink, the next layer, to sort of slip on, so it doesn't tend to grab the card as much. Okay, now technically, because we're coming nearer the shore, we probably should get lighter as we go down here, but I'm using a bit of artistic license. And I'm going to just place this ink right up to behind those sand dunes. Now this little bit here can be considered water or sand dune, whatever you prefer. So putting it on first where I want it and then just shading it up a little bit, but without going all the way to the top of the wave. Pop in our bit of suede shoes. Give that a soften. And you can see, hopefully you're starting to see the 3D effect working with the waves by adding depth. I use this same technique with a small brush to add depth to the rocks in the waterfall scene and also in the Outback Rocks stamp. Okay, that's looking pretty cool, isn't it? Whoa. Okay, stop looking at it and keep going. Okay, so I'm going to switch now to our browns for our sand dunes. So popping lids on my blue inks. And I'll use Sandcastle and then a little bit of icing on the cake. And switching to a brown brush. So I've got a small brown brush and a larger one. So with the Sandcastle ink, we can pop that on at the bottom of the card. with some circles. And then almost just smudge it up near the top. A little bit of texture will be fine because sand dunes have texture. Make sure we cover right down to the bottom of the card there. If you want to, you can even turn your card around and do that bit of pouncing, just to make sure you've got right to the bottom of the card and given that a little bit extra depth. But we don't want to come in and add the icing on the cake there because it's not brown earth we're doing, it's sand dunes. If you want to, you could have used some of the yellow, the chiffon, just to make them a little bit more yellowy. Or leave it to just the browns, totally up to you. Okay, now with our icing on the cake colour, come in, ink it up on the tip of the small brush, and then, like we did with the waves, I'm looking for somewhere where I can put some shadow behind. So because we've got a sand dune there, we can actually shade behind it a little bit. And this will give us more 3D quality to the image. So pop it in there. This is fading off, so I'm going to have less brown there and more of the dark brown up here. So that just sort of drifts away at that point. And I'll also shade in behind these ones. Then we're going to repeat that process for the sand dunes up here. So we'll just wiggle a little bit of ink in. Turn your card around. So always remember, if you turn your card, you can then put pressure on that brush and wiggle it right up to the edge of the image where you want it. And with mine, I've got a little bit of pink from my sunrise hitting the top of the sand dunes. That's okay. That would actually really happen if you had a lovely strong sunrise. That a bit of pink colour would be drifting over there. So don't stress over that at all. Bit in behind that one. And you'll see that suddenly, that instantly makes the other one stand out more. But I've possibly got a little bit too much of the blue come onto that one there. So I will do a bit of darker brown along the bottom edge of that sand dune as well. And we'll pop a bit in here. Okay. Now that's all for our colouring. Isn't it wonderful? The next stage is to make sure that it's really, really dry because I want to emboss over the top of that. So I'm going to use my heat gun and make sure it's quite dry. This would be really good if I had one that I'd prepared earlier, but I only half prepared it, so we're having to make sure this is dry. This is where I'm going to come in with the grass set. And you can do this either with it on an acrylic block or in it with in your stamp press, whichever you prefer. And I'm going to curl the grass up the outer sides and emboss that with some black embossing powder, which I've got here. Just need to grab my Versafine ink pad. So we ink up this lovely tall grass set. We could use the reeds here. We could use either of the taller grasses from this set. I do like this one though because it curls up right up the side of the card there. Did I anti-static pad that? I can't remember if I did or not, so I'm going to do it again. Wipe over with your anti-static pad. This again helps to stop the embossing powder sticking to where you don't want it to stick to, particularly when I've been doing all that inking. Now, check is make sure that the ends of the grass do go off the edge of the card. And you can stamp it right off so you only get a couple of fronds, or you can stamp nearly the whole grass on there. This is a time where if you've had, sometimes with gloss card, it might get a little mark on it before you use it, or you might have had a fingerprint or something, and it means that the ink hasn't taken as well to that spot. So putting on this embossing is a great way of covering up any little areas that you aren't quite happy with. Let's pop our powder on there. Right up to that top frond. And I have a little fine brush standing by so that I can give my card a tap. Turn it over, a couple of taps on the back. And then just check, and I can see where we'd mainly been doing the colouring of the brown, it wasn't quite dry. So we've picked up some extra embossing powder where we don't want it. So we're just going to come in. A few little grains is quite, because you can just blame that on insects in amongst the grass, in amongst the reeds and things. You know, I mean, when are you at the beach when there's not flies and stuff hanging around?
True, very true.
But I really don't want it in my beautiful sky. So I'm making sure that we've got no bits up there. If you need to, give another bit of a tap on the back. There's quite a bit along the bottom of the hill there, but the sand dune, but I might actually leave that. I'm not so worried by that one. I just don't want any in the sky.
Are they dead insects in the sand dune?
Yep. Or seaweed washed up on the far shores.
Or little baby bits of grass just starting to grow.
Oh, all the little babies. Okay, let's pop our embossing powder just out of the way a bit so I can do my heating. There she goes. If I was being really picky, there's a spot down there at the bottom where I haven't got the embossing ink right to the edge of the card there. I could come in with a Versafine pen and just fill that in and put some more embossing powder on. But I'm pretty happy with the rest of that. Just going to give that another wipe with the anti-static pad though to see whether I can stop it sticking to the other side. Now when I do the other side, I'll do it a little bit different because I don't want to make it look exactly the same, so I might stamp a bit less of the stamp. And here I've got a little fault where the ink hadn't taken so well when I was first stamping it, so I might put just a few fronds just through that as well. So let's get our Versafine pad again, ink up. So just going to stamp a couple of fronds over that spot there. Do be careful when you're doing this stamping because you are stamping on glossy card, it is slippery. So certainly if you want to use something like your stamp press, it is quite good to do that because that will help stop you slipping. Now let's pop our embossing powder on there and hope that we don't have it sticking everywhere this time. Give ourselves a bit of a tap on the side, flip it over, tap on the back. Don't do the flick thing, it flicks too much powder off. Just a little tap is plenty. And I'm looking at my card here and thinking that looks fabulous. No extra bits where I don't want them. So let's go straight onto the heating. Now there is the two little sayings in the set that I could use, the seize the day or just breathe, but I think for this one all I'm going to add, and this will be stamped with the Catherine Pooler black once again, is a set of 2 seagulls or just one on his own. And I think for this one we're just going to have one on his own. So just a nice light touch, and we've got our little seagull there. So So I'll bring that forward onto the black card so Maddie can get a good look at it. I'll hold it up a bit because the gloss tends to reflect the lights a bit too much. So that's our lovely beach scene with depth into the waves, depth into the sand dunes, and just one little lonely seagull. Hope you like that one. I think it's pretty gorgeous. And we'll see you soon for another tutorial. Okay, thanks for watching.
Well, we hope you enjoyed that session. Now let's get Cathy back and we'll answer a few of those questions. Cathy, that demonstration was just amazing. Thank you for sharing it with us.
It's those colours are so pretty, aren't they? Using that pucker up pink in the sunset sky is just gorgeous. I'm going to keep doing that one.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, we did have a few questions. Now, we were asked, can you use the Versafine Clear on gloss card? That's a big no. Versafine and Versafine Clear don't dry on gloss card, so you only use them on glossy if you go over the top of them. It doesn't matter if you heat set them or leave them for 3 days, they will not dry.
Yes, we don't want things not drying after 3 days. That's really bad.
No. So I use Versafine Clear on my matte card when I'm blending scenes on matte card stock on our cotton blend card, but on the gloss card, I always use the Catherine Pooler Black because it stays black and it dries quite quickly on the gloss.
Yeah.
You've still got to heat set it, but it does dry nice and solid and doesn't bleed, doesn't rub off and doesn't smudge once you've got it dry.
Yeah, because you don't want to ruin your beautiful work.
Oh, no. No. Now, the brushes, there was a comment on the blending brushes. I find that I really like the blending brushes, again, for matte cardstock, but on glossy card, they just don't seem to get the ink transferred. So those long-handled paint brushes, they manage to transfer the ink to the gloss card better. And but they're not as good for blending on matte cardstock because they tend to put too much of a blob and it grabs the card and leaves your lines. So the long-handled ones are good for edging on matte cardstock and good for glossy card, but our other blending brushes are much better for cardstock.
Right. Now, we did have a few concerns about blending. So did you just have a couple of quick tips for those getting started?
Yes. So what Em said in her comment was that to do more blending the colours over the top of each other. So when you put a colour on, make sure you blend it off to almost nothing around. So where you've put it, blend off to almost nothing around the edges of where you want it. So then you overlap your next colour back over that. Right. And that's where you get your blending, your seamless blending.
Yeah. And yeah, perhaps practice like on gloss card, but not within the stamp confines to give yourself some space to practice.
Yeah. Well, you can just do some backgrounds with glossy to practice and then just emboss some butterflies over the top and make cards out of them or use them for die cutting and things like that. So you can still use your practice bits.
Oh, we're just full of good ideas, aren't we?
Here we are. All sorts of things we can keep crafting with. Now, I must mention before we go, I do have some more specials on for the weekend. If you go onto the website, they're in a special tab called Sandown Online Specials. So we've got Versafine Clear ink pads. We've got some of the mica powders. These are some of the things that will be getting used in the cards on Saturday and Sunday. So Versafine Clear pads and the mica powders, the blast ones, and also our new design stamps. Plus, for all stamp orders over the weekend that are over $50, they'll get a free stamp in their little parcel.
Fantastic, Cathy. Oh, thank you so much. It's just so lovely to have you join us here today.
It's been wonderful. And thank you, everyone, for watching and all the comments. It's just fabulous.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much. And yes, if anyone has any comments, they can pop them there and we'll get back to them later today.
Will do.
Excellent. Thanks, Cathy.
Thank you.
So we hope you enjoyed that wonderful demonstration from Cathy, and always Cathy and her husband Matthew do such a fantastic job bringing those demonstrations right into our homes. So like we said, if you do have any comments, pop them down and Cathy will go back and follow them up. Check out their website, Eclectic Images, for their specials, and we'll have Cathy coming back over the next couple of days of the show with some other beautiful cards as well. So as always, thank you so much for joining us at Spring into Sandown Online Craft Show. As we said, for all the details and all the sessions and links to the retailers, head over to our website from picturetopageandbeyond.com.au where you can get all of those details. So this is Michelle signing off. We hope you have a crafty day.